Jiro here for Umbra Games with a review of Dead Cells, played on a physical PlayStation 4 copy for the review, released August 2018, also available on Switch physically, and originally available through Steam Early Access, and it's digitally on Xbox One as well. Dead Cells is what's known as a roguelike, and in this case mixed with a side-scrolling action platformer. For those not clear on the term roguelike, the basic setup is playing a game where the playthrough is relatively shorter in length, usually with one life, and when your run is done, some of the things you collected cumulatively will be available for your next attempt. But if you die, all your power-ups and currency are gone forever. Levels are generally randomly generated to varying degrees so that each playthrough can feel a bit different to help replayability. In Dead Cells, you take the role of a beheaded character with a massive sentient slimy cells slithering into a corpse and allowing you to take control. The game resembles the Castlevania series a bit in its action, holding two weapons, one activated with square and one with triangle, as well as sub-weapons, namely grenades and deployable traps assigned to L2 and R2. You begin the game with a relatively small selection of possible armaments, and as most roguelikes do, you can open up new options cumulatively. In this case, with a collection of cells, dropped from enemies and found in containers that can be paid to the collector in combination with the blueprint to manifest them into rotation. Gear can eventually be dropped or upgraded into plus versions, increasing its base quality and providing random effects, like bleeding or burning or freezing damage, or doing extra damage to an enemy suffering from one of those, etc. For maneuverability, you can double jump from the get-go, and circle activates the dodge roll, which grants you invulnerability to pretty much everything for those animation frames, things that hurt and things that don't. For example, you'll encounter some shield-bearing enemies, and you can either wait for them to attack you by charging, or just dodge roll through them, turn around and hit them from behind. Magically, this dodge also works on the various swinging ball traps and spinning blades that come at you as well. On top of your weapons, you also have a ground pound that can be used that may be quite possibly the most useful ground pound I've ever seen in a game. That's before you even get stat bonuses and weapons that can enhance it. Randomness is the name of the game, from your starting weapon to locations of treasure chests to contents of treasure chests and shops. Sometimes you just have to take that Spartan sandal or shield until you can find the sword or spell of your choice. All equipment comes in a single or combination of colors, red for your brutality stat, purple for tactics, and green for survivability. The fourth color of equipment is legendary, and it will automatically tune to your highest stat. You can see current character stats in the lower left corner. These are augmented by acquisition of power scrolls, granting a point of your choice. Each point will offer a 15% boost to weapons of that color and also grant a diminishing percentage of HP, encouraging you to keep a little balance of your stats in order to maximize those hit points. There are 17 stages, including 4 that are exclusively boss fights, but you don't progress through every stage every time. You always begin in the prisoner's quarters, and at first your only choice is the Promenade of the Condemned. But if you can obtain the Viner in there, on your next run, you can use it to activate a climbing vine in the prisoner's quarters to instead reach the toxic sewers. So as you can see, Dead Cells inherits a little what they call the Metroidvania through the permanent acquisition of these runes, enabling you to take alternate paths to reach the final boss in the throne room. Each stage has a minimum number of those power scrolls you can acquire, so when you're building up power to fight that end boss, I found it most successful to take the route that hit the most stages. Usually with the full exploration of each every time, it ended up taking me about an hour from start to finish. There's quite a bit of diversity in the stages, with the only ones sticking out as remotely close to each other are the toxic and ancient sewers that kind of do a little palette swap. They've taken a unique approach to a couple of the stages, including the Slumbering Sanctuary, which became my favorite. And the final stage requires you to scout out rooms to find elite monsters to gather keys. There's a mini map in the corner that will autofill complete as you move along, with colored icons for teleporters, exits, and treasure you may have been close enough to, but didn't pick up. You can tap the touchpad at any time to get a full view of the area you're in. In between stages, you'll go into a forge where you must spend your cells with a collector, open up the ability to upgrade weapons to plus levels with another vendor, accept mutations from a third guy, and have the ability to refill your health potions. The collector offers some general upgrades in addition to all the item blueprints. These include your carrying capacity of potions, the ability to make certain thresholds of gold carry over between playthroughs when you start over, and increasing your starting weapon options. The reforging of weapons can cost some serious gold, obtained by killing enemies and finding gemstones, as well as using a purchasable recycling ability to get some gold back from unneeded equipment. You can equip up to 3 mutations at a time and start with a handful available to you. These include things like double ammo for ranged weapons, an extra life, and quicker recharge on skill usage. More can be opened similar to the way you do weapons by finding the blueprints and spinning cells with the collector. You can pay a small sum of money to reset these in any given playthrough. One of the keys to the roguelike is feeling like you're progressing overall, even if you haven't finished a run, and the plentifulness of cells to be found and the number of unlockables helps you keep working toward that goal. I think one of my key replies to people that ask me how this game is just how solid the gameplay feels. For those that play something like Dark Souls, you know those moments where you roll out of the way and do a crazy counterattack to something and you feel awesome for your skills at that moment? Dead Cells provides several moments like that per minute. The dodging and quick attacking and ground pound combination allows you to be so agile and rarely feeling cheated by any kind of cheap shots. The variety of slow and powerful, quick and deadly, melee and ranged, and status-inflicting weapon options can easily suit any playstyle. That is assuming you can get the drop. This also encourages you, though, to play in other ways. I will say I'm personally not a huge fan of random chance in games, which can generally kill my personal tenacity for the roguelike, and in Dead Cells, while the randomness can bring a bit of frustration at times, this is one of the most consistent roguelike games I've played. While a specific weapon may not be my first choice and doesn't quite tune to the stats I want to eventually have, there were maybe only 1 or 2 times out of the 25 to 30 games I played where I felt completely disadvantaged. I will say the last boss requires you to know what you're doing, both in stats and in gameplay. While it may not be impossible, getting items with defense boosting buffs can be pretty important. If the first boss is a difficulty level of 1 out of 10, the next to last boss is probably a difficulty of 3. The final boss is a 10. On one hand, it's great that you can't rely on gear alone, like the wonderful, sometimes overpowered feeling crossbow turrets. On the other hand, there's not really a good ramp up in difficulty to prepare you for what's to come. When it takes an hour to get there, it can feel pretty defeating. Welcome to old school gaming. After finishing the game, you receive an item called a boss stem cell. You can put this into the tube at the start of the prisoner's quarters to increase the game's difficulty. This puts advanced enemies in earlier stages. It seemed to make the stages bigger. It could have been my imagination. It also removes some of the health potion refills between stages. This also allows you to access extra rooms you come across, marked by the symbol scratched on the wooden door, that with the 1-cell doors, it gave me access to more shops. I saw doors with up to 5 symbols, so I'm assuming replay goes at least until then. Dead Cells seem to try and do something with the overarching story by changing small things in the environment through subsequent playthroughs. There are hidden rooms and messages and things to examine that sort of paint a picture of this disease that caused this situation, and as I mentioned, I only finished it on the first difficulty. But maybe there's some story resolution at the end of all 6 finishes? As it stood, from what I observed, it had a lot of potential of doing something really great, but I just never received the twist or revelation that I was expecting. Graphically, the world of Dead Cells is amazing. As I mentioned earlier, with level diversity, nearly every stage feels like it has its own story and exists in this beautiful, grim, pixely world. Regular enemies look really good, with a great variety, and not even any palette swapping. 2 of the bosses kind of stood out to me that didn't look quite as detailed as the rest of the bestiary, but you can get so busy dodging that you probably won't pay much attention. The music in this game is also fantastic. Like Shovel Knight, it's got that retro feel that I'll go to YouTube and listen to while I'm working on my desk. Overall, Dead Cells provides some great frantic action, some fun secrets to explore, well-randomized maps, lots of replay value, a good weapon variety, a consistent roguelike experience, great aesthetics visually and audibly, good overall progression for a roguelike, excellent and precise controls, good level variety, but the final boss difficulty spike kind of came out of nowhere, and the story, if there is more, felt incomplete to the likely average player who won't beat it on all 6 difficulties, if there even is anything more. Rated as a roguelike, Dead Cells hits an 86 out of 100 on my true 0 to 100 scale, where 50 is an average game. This is Giro for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching.